May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Please be seated. Mark, what other people say about you is none of your business. That's what our late presiding bishop, Frank Griswold, said to me about a quarter of a century ago after I was elected bishop suffragan in Alabama. Mark, what other people say about you is none of your business. It's a startling idea. I don't live that way often, and I don't know about you. But often I am somewhere in the world like the people Jesus is condemning in the gospel today. Concerned about the opinions of others, and in a kind of economy where there is reward or punishment for either doing things well or doing things poorly. And in that circle, we can spend much of our energy and much of our time. It's a little bit like staying in the shallow end of the pool or the little area of the ocean where you can wade. In that world of exchange between what people think about you and how you can influence what they think about you. And as we know, I think we all know, there's a much vaster world than that. It's not that the opinions of others really don't matter. Bishop Griswold was not saying that. He was saying it's proportion, and it's understanding why we would care about the opinions of others, why I would be solicitous of the opinions of others and seek to do the right thing by them, not to receive a reward, but rather to cultivate a relationship. So if I were to get out of that circle of opinion exchange, that kind of economy where I was seeking that kind of reward, where would I go? What's the alternative to that? Well, I think it would be remiss of me when Ash Wednesday coincides with Valentine's to not talk about the heart. I think we have to, don't we? Don't you? Yeah, we have to go there. So Jesus ends this passage, this section of his preaching by saying, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And that relates, of course, to what he was saying earlier about the opinions of others and this kind of exchange for rewards. Because that world, where I'm so concerned about the opinions of others and receiving their approval or avoiding their disapproval, is a world where we also find many objects as opposed to subjects, as opposed to beings whose interiority, their spirits, their souls, their physical welfare, where that matters to me because of their personhood and not because of whether they can reward me or not. Now, Jesus uses in his parables stories about treasure quite a lot. And in my world, where I am patterned by these economies of reward and stay in the shallow more than I would like, those treasures look like objects, don't they? Silver and gold buried in a field, forgotten after the war is over and the safety has come, but the family who buried them is no longer around, and nobody remembers that it's there, and then somebody finds it, and they go and they sell everything they have to buy that field so that the treasure, these objects, are theirs. Or people in our day who find a sunken ship and compete with everyone else who might be out there looking for the doubloons and everything else that might be sunk there, putting their lives at risk for treasure, objects that are at the bottom of some watery grave. Or back to Jesus, a person opens an oyster, ready to enjoy, and suddenly gleaming up from within it is a pearl, as Jesus says, of great price. And that object becomes the focus of the person's life. This is what I've been waiting for, this pearl of great price. These all appear to be objects to me. But we can see from Jesus' own life that he did not mean that at all. He did not live for objective things. He did not amass for himself treasure that is made of precious metals or jewels or fine fabrics. No. What Jesus did is nurture relationship. And those are the treasures to which he points us. Time and again, Jesus was restoring people from their positions of loneliness, alienation, and even exile back into community. The neighboring Episcopal Church that way, in Potrero Hill, St. Gregory of Nyssa, has a freestanding altar, and around it is carved in Greek, a quotation from Luke's Gospel that says this about Jesus: he welcomes sinners and eats with them. This was a bad thing in his critics' minds. But this is what he went about doing: touching lepers, and by so doing, making himself unclean, curing them of leprosy, not only, though, for the sake of removing a disease, but for restoring them to the community from which they had been exiled, risking his own uncleanness and own removal from the community for the sake of restoring relationship. And the sinners that he welcomed to the meals: tax collectors, prostitutes, people who were Israelites, people of the people who had been removed from the community. And he brought them back in. When I came to be the bishop here in California in 2006, something remarkable was happening in the Episcopal Church. We call it the Movement for Open Communion. It swept the whole country, swept the whole Episcopal Church, 17 countries. It has not been officially approved by the church, but it is a fact. And it started here in this diocese with a book by a woman named Sarah Miles called Take This Bread. And people wanted to know, well, Bishop, are you going to allow this? I was unsure. The standards of the Episcopal Church were clear. Everyone is welcome to receive communion if they have been baptized. And I sat down with a person who was an advocate for this new thing, and they said this to me: Mark, I see nowhere in the gospel that Jesus puts any barriers for table communion with him in their way. Rather, he takes them away. I was convinced. Jesus was about removing the barriers and bringing us back into relationship. So may I suggest that the treasure we are seeking is not an object, but is a living relationship. It is restored relationship between us and those from whom we have become alienated. The board chair of this trustee of this cathedral has said to me that he hears the message of this cathedral as being that journey from loneliness, alienation, and exile into community. I believe he is right. I believe this is what Dean Malcolm, all the clergy, all the staff, all the people of this great cathedral are preaching and living. This is the treasure of the heart that on this Ash Wednesday, as we enter into the season of Lent, I ask you to join me in seeking. It is a living thing, not an object, and it will take us out of the shallows and into the deep.